This is Angine de Poitrine. Now, if we look carefully at this band, we can see there's something quite unusual going on. And it's not just the fact that they're dressed as the French-Canadian cousins of Mr. Blobby. No, it's the fact that this guitar has far more frets on it than it should have, at least for a normal guitar. The frets are far closer than they usually would be, right? And that's because this is a microtonal guitar. Angine de Poitrine are playing microtonal music. Microtonal music is music that uses intervals that are smaller than the standard intervals we get in Western music. The smallest interval you usually get in Western music is what we call the half step or the semitone, basically one fret on the guitar or one key on the keyboard. C to C sharp is a semitone. But despite the fact that Western instruments and Western music theory is set up to suggest that there is no pitch between C and C sharp, there's actually many different pitches between these two notes. In Western music, we usually tune middle C, for example, to the frequency 261.63 Hertz. And then the next available note is C sharp, which is tuned to 277.18 Hertz. So there is definitely a whole bunch of different frequencies between these different notes, and any different frequency, well, that's just a different pitch we could use. So artists like Angine de Poitrine use these intervals, use these notes between the notes. Now, there's various ways you can go about doing this, but the most straightforward way, and the way that Angine de Poitrine seems to do it, is using not 12 divisions of the octave, i.e. not dividing the space between C and the next C by 12, but doubling those divisions. Having a division between every normal note on our Western keyboard or our guitar neck, giving us 24 notes in the octave. The normal setup of having 12 notes in an octave is referred to as 12-tet or 12-tone equal temperament, or it's sometimes also described as 12-edo, edo standing for equal divisions of the octave. So when we put a note between all of those 12 notes, we wind up with 24-tet or 24-edo, 24 divisions of the octave. And that's why there's so many frets on this guitar, because it's giving access to those 24 notes rather than the typical 12 notes. So how do we refer to these 24 notes? Well, of course, 12 of them are the regular notes we're used to, but the other 12 are now what we call either half sharps or half flats, indicated with these symbols. For example, if we look at Sarniez by Angine de Poitrine, we can see here in the bass riff that we have various microtonal accidentals. We have these half sharps, so this is a D half sharp, a quarter tone sharper than a regular D note. Also here we have an E half flat, so the note between E flat and E natural, a quarter tone flatter than a regular E. And in fact, in the context of this music, we're getting these notes all next to each other in order. They're all one quarter tone apart in this sort of ultra chromatic scale. D half sharp goes up one quarter tone to E flat goes up one quarter tone to E half flat, and E half flat goes up one quarter tone to E natural. That's what's happening here. So this song, like most of Angine de Poitrine's music, is built by stacking up layers of bass and then guitar. We can see that the guitarist has this double-necked guitar where they have the bass and the guitar, both of which have microtonal frets. So in this song, they begin by laying down that microtonal bass line, then they double it an octave higher with the guitar, and then they add a line which is more or less a harmony of the previous line above. We're now getting a sense of harmony in the song. So have we got some weird microtonal chords going on here? Well, in fact, not really. Most of the time in this song, the harmonic intervals we're hearing between the different layers are still regular 12-tet intervals that we're used to, like minor thirds and major thirds. They are offset by quarter tones. Their root note is a quarter tone different from the previous note, but at any given moment in the music, we're not really hearing a microtonal harmony. We're hearing a regular harmony, potentially rooted on a microtonal note. this is the key to how I think this music works so well, despite the fact it's using microtones, is because it's not actually giving us any unusual type of harmony. It's still giving us the sweet intervals we're used to, like major thirds and minor thirds. We can think about this as horizontal microtonality, i.e. in the melodic realm we are getting microtonal intervals as notes move from one to another, but from a vertical point of view, from a harmonic point of view, it isn't microtonal. That is at least until later in the song, where we do start to get the odd moment of microtonal harmony. We get the odd moment where the interaction between the different layers of guitar that have been built up do give us some intervals, some chords that are microtonal. For example, here we have the notes D natural, C half sharp, another D natural an octave up, and then F sharp. If we play those together sustained, it's a very spicy sound. But we don't get that level of sustain in the actual music. This is an incredibly fleeting moment. So that is one of the techniques that Angine de Poitrine use to manage the microtonality, is that they don't really give us that many microtonal chords. It's more microtonal melodies. And actually, if we look at the melodies as well, we can see what I consider to be the second technique they use to make the microtonality more manageable, more palatable, and that is by moving in stepwise, moving in conjunct motion, i.e. not taking big leaps, but moving in tiny steps. And these really are very tiny steps. These are quarter tone steps, the smallest intervals we can get in this 24-tet system. The reason why I think this is at the heart of what makes this music more palatable is because when you play these microtonal notes next to each other, our ears, our Western ears, can clock that they are different notes. But if we were leaping around between microtonal notes, our Western ears would instead interpret those intervals not as microtonal intervals, as 24-tet intervals, but as out-of-tune versions of intervals that we're used to, because we wouldn't have such obvious context for what note we're meant to be hearing. When we move from E flat to E natural via the microtonal note in between them, E half flat, our ear has no choice but to acknowledge that as a separate and distinct note. So let's take a look at a different song by Angine de Poitrine, Sherpa. Now, once again, we've got a very similar setup here with the guitars stacking up different layers, and we have that same microtonality, that same 24-tet tuning. And this song has a more distinctly Arabic sound, sort of Middle Eastern sound. You may have noticed how in this video I've been describing how our Western ears are not used to microtonality. And that's because beyond the Western world, for example, in the Arabic world, these smaller intervals are commonly used. We call them microtonal because we're saying that they're unusual, but in Arabic music or Persian music, these are quite commonplace. And in this song, Sherpa, Angine de Poitrine have actually used the microtonality in a way that is quite similar to how it would be used by Arabic musicians, namely by using what Arabic musicians would describe as maqam hijaz. Maqams are kind of similar to scales in Western music, but not exactly the same, not an exact counterpart, but we can think about them sort of like a scale. And maqam hijaz is almost the equivalent of what Western musicians would call the Phrygian dominant scale. But I say almost because you can't really play maqam hijaz with 12-tet tuning, normal Western tuning, because you need to be able to move some of these notes around, namely the second degree, the third degree, and the sixth degree. Their intonation, their tuning is going to be played around with. And that is exactly what Angine de Poitrine do in Sherpa. When we get the sixth degree of the scale here, which in this song is F because we're in a key of A, it's a F half sharp rather than the F natural you would get in the Western version of the scale. And same goes for the second degree. Rather than the flat second we'd get, the B flat we'd get in the Western version of the scale, we're getting a B half flat, so it's slightly sharper. So this band are making some truly fresh music. It really does feel like this is alien music, the combination of microtonality, weird meters, and of course these outlandish outfits. But I think it's great, they catch your attention with the weird costumes, but you stay for the music. Also, if you've been wondering what Angine de Poitrine actually means, well, it's the French name for the medical condition angina pectoris, which is chest pain or discomfort that occurs when part of your heart doesn't get enough blood or oxygen. So make of that what you will. If you'd like to learn more about microtonality, then check out the video I made about 5 years ago that's linked down below. I have just released an album. It's called Under an Empty Sky, and as of today it's available on streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music. It's also available on Bandcamp, where you can download it or pre-order it on CD or vinyl. It's 10 original songs that I wrote, recorded alongside some fantastic musicians, fantastic vocalists. If you enjoy what I do on YouTube here, well, the easiest way you can thank me is just go and listen to my music, because writing my own music, recording my own music, it's my biggest passion. And to have people like yourselves listen to it means the world. So thank you so much to everyone who's already bought the music or sent me kind messages about the music. It's all linked down below, and let me know what you think. Thank you so much again.
Father, smite me, show